John Smith, Jock Garden, clergyman, Australian trade unionist and politician, was one of the founders of the Communist Party of Australia. Early life. Garden was born in the Brandenburg area of Lossiemouth, Moray, in northern Scotland. His early education was at the Drainey Parish School, and on leaving school he was apprenticed as a sailmaker to his cousin William Cormack. He graduated from a Bible college in Glasgow and ordained as a Baptist minister. Garden's elder brother James, also a sailmaker, migrated to Australia in the 1890s, and the rest of the family joined him in Sydney in 1904. The Labour politician. In 1906, Garden was a Church of Christ minister at Harcourt, Victoria. The next year, on the 6th of May in Melbourne, with the forms of the church, he married Jeanie May Ritchie from Leith, Scotland. By 1909 he was a member of the Labour Party and also a Baptist preacher at Maclean, New South Wales. In 1914 he was living at Paddington and working intermittently at his trade. He became the president of the Sailmakers Union and its delegate on the Labour Council of New South Wales, which was to be his power base until 1934. In 1916 he was elected Assistant Secretary of the Council, and in 1918 became its Secretary. He failed as a Labour candidate at Parramatta in the 1917 state elections. Before that, Garden was employed from 1915 by the Department of Defence at its ordnance store at Circular Quay. In 1916 he was fined £10 for improperly accepting a gift from a supplier to the department and was dismissed on the 14th of March 1917, year after admitting that he had destroyed an important voucher. Garden's oratorical style, coupled with a strong Scots burr, ranged from captivating to ranting, adaptable to the pulpit and the trades hall. His speeches were quite often rambling tirades, but seldom unproductive. He read nonconformist and radical literature, including Marx and Lenin, enthusiastically after the 1917 Russian Revolution. The times were auspicious for Garden on the Labour Council in 1916–18. World War I and conscription divided the Labour movement. In 1916 the Labour State Premier, William Holman, along with other moderate politicians, were expelled and formed the Conservative National Government. The triumphant Unionist wing, led by the Industrial Vigilance Council, became even more left-wing. Some moderate unions left the Labour Council. The Industrial Vigilance Council tried to make the Labour Party the political arm of the One Big Union, a radical scheme. The Australian Workers' Union made the turmoil worse by trying to make itself a non-revolutionary OBU with the support of some moderate politicians and unions. Garden was expelled in 1919 from the Labour Party for advocating revolutionary socialism. For a time he was a member of the Industrial Socialist Labour Party, the Communist. In November 1920 Garden announced the formation of the Communist Party of Australia, which he had initiated with W.P. Earsman. Garden was prominent in 1921 at the All-Australian Trade Union Congress in Melbourne, which wanted to impose a positive socialist policy on the Australian Labour Party. He rapidly became one of its most prominent figures, leading a group of militant trade unionists known as the Trades Hall Reds. Under Garden's leadership, the CPA concentrated on trying to gain control of the New South Wales trade unions, and through them to re-enter the Labour Party. This led to a split in the CPA, with more radical members rejecting the attempt to re-enter the Labour Party. In 1922, however, Garden attended the Congress of the Communist International in Moscow, which endorsed his strategy. Although the Labour Party, under its parliamentary leader Jack Lang, rejected communism, Garden as Secretary of the Trades Hall was a powerful powerful figure in the labor movement, and in 1923 he was readmitted to the Labour Party and elected to its state executive. In 1924, however, Lang regained control of the New South Wales Labour Party and had Garden and other communists once again expelled from the party, a decision which was upheld by the federal executive. This was the end of the CPA's attempts to take over the Labour Party, and by 1925 the CPA had become mainly an appendage of Garden's machine in the Sydney Trades Hall. At the 1925 state elections, the CPA ran candidates, including Garden, against Labour candidates in working-class seats and was heavily defeated. This convinced Garden that the CPA had no future, and in 1926 he left the party, returned to Labour. Having rejected the likelihood of the CPA's mainstream political success following the party's 1925 defeats, Garden re-embraced the Labour Party and became a supporter of Lang. While retaining his power base in the Trades Hall, he was elected an alderman of the Sydney City Council, and a member of the executive of the Australian Council of Trade Unions. He also ran the Labour Council's radio station, 2KY. In 1931, when the Labour Party split over the Scullin government's response to the Great Depression, Garden became a leading supporter of Lang's faction, which rejected Scullin's policies and favoured repudiating Australia's debt to British bondholders. Garden stood for the House of Representatives at the 1931 election as a Lang Labour candidate in the division of Cook in Inner Sydney. He was unsuccessful, but at the 1934 election he was elected the first of a number of ex-communists to become Labour parliamentarians. However, when the Labour Party was reunited under Jock Garden's leadership in 1936, Garden was dropped as a candidate as part of the peace settlement, and at the 1937 elections he retired from Parliament. When Labour came to office federally in 1941, Garden was employed by Eddie Ward, a former Lang Labour man who was Minister for External Territories from 1943 to 49. In this capacity he travelled to Papua New Guinea, then an Australian possession, and was involved in the corrupt sale of timber leases to various business friends. In 1946, a royal commission found that Garden had engaged in corrupt conduct, and he was subsequently convicted of fraud and sentenced to 3 years imprisonment. In 1949, M.H. Ellis, intent upon showing the connections between the communist movement and the ALP of the later 1940s, and ignoring Garden's 1920s leaving the party, wrote a book, The Garden Path, the story of the saturation of the Australian labour movement by communism. Later life. He disappeared from public life and died in hospital on the 31st of December 1968. He was cremated with Church of Christ forms and was survived by his wife, one of his 2 sons and one of his 2 daughters.